Hello there. Now, joining me today in Milangela Soul Garden is, wow, let me put it this way, another miracle. And those of you who follow me and listen to my episodes, you would know that I am all about transformation, the type of transformation that comes from within. And of course, a lot must be done in this area, and it's not an easy stuff, right? The way I do it, I either invite people who are professionals, like medical people, for a good reason, because they know things, they have the experience and the knowledge and the skills and the tools. But on the other hand, I invite people like you and me because they just did the amazing. They, like my guest today, they just and he did the incredible, the impossible, so to say. So a warm welcome to you, dear Gary Buckmann.
Thank you so much, Milangela. I'm so happy to be here with you and speak to your audience.
I am so honored to have you. Really appreciate your time. Now, we are stationed in Slovenia and you live in California. And I'm going to be honest, I heard of you last year and I was thrilled to have you on. Only there was one problem. Gary, you see, was extremely busy last year. Working on something, and I had to wait for that thing to be finished. But I was lucky enough to have a wonderful Victoria Buckmann on my show, who is a sales guru. And everyone who is interested in knowing about sales, please go to my episode 17, where Victoria and me are talking about what sales is and what sales is not. So, but today, Gary. Now, to kick off this conversation, really, I need to give our audience a little bit of your bio, and I'm going to just put it in a nutshell. Okay. While in college, Gary Buckmann went from a top-level athlete to lying in a hospital bed, paralyzed from a broken neck. By breaking through barriers, removing limiting beliefs, and perseverance, he went on to achieve a complete recovery. Gary has been motivating, inspiring, and training men and women for over 25 years. His unique ability to coach has inspired them to overcome obstacles, encourage new ways of thinking, and achieve national championship success. Gary ran a successful business for 15 years while training the world as a USA national team coach. He's worked with 5 Olympic gold medal winners. Wow, Gary. But I was sort of hoping that we could get Gary, the young Gary, the gymnast, say in your 90, when you were 19, 20 years of age. So how was it back then? That was in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. How was it back then to do all the hard work when it comes to training? Because things were a lot different, right?
Yes. Well, the whole thing about it, Milangela, is that I just, when I was coming back from the injury, I went to the basics to retrain myself. And I think that's very important, that we get back to basics, because when you get back to basics and you develop all the awareness that you need to develop in every area of your life or in sports, then you're going to reach your full potential. And so when I was back, when I was 20, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't all that spiritual, but I had a feeling inside that I could heal myself. I could do what people were telling me I couldn't do.
But please give us a bit of Gary before the accident. How was it for you to train? I understand that on top of the academic work that you were doing, and of course a lot of training, you also did other things. So basically, it's not just, being sporty. It was to do with um, time management, if you ask me. So how was that for you? Give us a bit of that, sort of the beginning of the story.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Well, when I was in school, I worked my way through school. So I had a job as a janitor at a mall. I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to work before school just so I could pay for school. And then I had classes all day from 8 until 3. And then I worked out from 3 o'clock until 6 or 7 o'clock. And then I had to go and study and do my homework. So that was kind of a typical day back then in the 70s. And I really had to focus and budget my time, and so I could get enough sleep even.
But I mean, did you do it yourself? I mean, because this is huge, to be that disciplined, to be that determined. Did you have like an angel or assistant who was whispering into your ear, Gary, come on, work needs to be done? How was it? I mean, because to me, this sounds very, you must have been extremely hardworking, diligent, and organized. Were you that determined from the very beginning?
Well, I think that came from my mother, this
Mm.
influence, as a child. My mom was 4'11" and 95 pounds. She was an Iowa farm girl, very disciplined and very determined. And she always encouraged me that, if you put your mind to it, you can do anything. And she always reminded me that dynamite came in small packages. So from the get-go, I always thought I could accomplish anything, once I put my mind to it. When I went to school, and being an athlete, from high school and stuff, I never really thought all the things that I was doing was a big deal. I just thought that that's what people do. You have, if how am I going to get through school? Well, I have to pay for it, so I got a job. How am I going to you know get through school? And do gymnastics and all that, that I had to do. So it was basically, I think, from as a child, I learned how to create and get what I wanted, because the typical answer in my family when I asked for something was, no, you can't have that. Get your head out of the clouds. That's impossible.
Mhm.
And so then I had to figure out and be creative of how I could get things. So as a young child, I was encouraged by my mom, and then I just figured out different creative ways to get what I needed.
How brilliant that is. I mean, really. So, but yet still, the accident unfortunately happened. Why, Gary? Can you give us a story around that?
Sure. The main reason that the accident happened was lack of awareness. Um, I skipped steps in my training. And so when I got lost, when I made a decision in practice one day that I thought was a good decision, by the time I realized where it was too late to save myself. And then I
Mhm.
broke my neck and got hurt. So um, I, th- I think that, okay, stop. I got it. Yeah. So I think the thing is, basics. I went back to the basics.
Okay.
And what that means, for you and your listeners is that um, I re-educated myself. I developed the awareness that I needed to be able be to heal and to be able to do the gymnastics that I wanted to do.
So basically, you were too courageous at the time. You missed a few steps and you just went for something that otherwise would have taken a longer time, probably. Was that it? But I'm also thinking about the function, the role of your coach in this. I would have been devastated in your coach's shoes. How was it for him?
Um, that's a great question. I'm not sure, because we never really communicated about that. Um, I'm sure that he had regret a little bit, but the I have to take some of the responsibility, because what happened as being an athlete, lots of times we have this ego, and the ego was leading the way. The ego was saying, yeah, you know what this vault's going to do for you in your career, and you're going to be famous and whatever else and all this stuff. And anyway, I was feeding off his ego and he was feeding off my ego, and we were making bad decisions.
Right. But mind you, you were 20 at the time. I mean, that's a lot of space. At that time, there's a lot of space for our egos, right? We just cannot think rationally a lot of times, I think. So I can't blame you for that. I'm only sorry that this happened. And yet, probably a blessing in disguise in its way. I mean, in a way, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I've said more than once, breaking my neck was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because
Gosh.
I was going down the wrong road. I was going
Mhm.
on the egotistical path of life, thinking I was all of this and all of that. And if I kept on that path, I would have never reached my potential as a human being.
Okay, now to move back to that horrible event. So you immediately lost probably consciousness, and you were taken to hospital. And once you came back and realized what had happened, can I dare asking you what was going on in your mind, and how was it for you? Or is
Yeah.
this too
Ooh.
difficult to answer?
No. I think, I'm glad you did ask that, because, for a long time I blocked it out just so I could survive when I was younger. And as I wrote the book, I had to, dig all of this up again and realize the emotions I was going through. And the best way to answer that is, when I was once they got me to the hospital, and all the commotion of, cutting my clothes off and putting me in bed, setting up the traction, putting me there, and coming in and giving me, pain medication. And after all the commotion settled down, it was nighttime, and I was just there, and I woke up. And I think I woke up because the pain medication wore off, and the pain woke me up. And then everything was quiet. And then the reality set in. Oh my gosh, like, so much had happened to me so quickly that it was like a dream. And I was hoping that I would just wake up and everything would be back to normal. And I was scared. My mind just ran through all the different scenarios, like, you know, is this how I'm going to be the rest of my life? How am I going to take care of myself? Will my girlfriend still love me? Will I be able to go back to gymnastics? Will I even be able to do anything? Drive my car again, ride a bike? My mind just went off in so many different tangents.
And once you managed to get out of this mode, what was your plan?
Well, the big thing that helped me the most was my teammates. They supported me, which what I thought was amazing in itself, because here's a bunch of 20-year-old guys who are going to school, competing, traveling, and doing everything. And they made sure that every day somebody was in the hospital with me, supporting me.
Wow.
I don't know how
That
they
is
did
huge.
that boggles my mind,
That's so unbelievable.
So, yeah. And yeah.
So you believed that you can change this situation upside down again, and get back to gym. Was that it?
Yes. And, what I did was, with over time, after about 4 weeks of being in the hospital and traction, that my doctor finally came in and said, Gary, you're not responding to any of the treatment, so you're going to be paralyzed the rest of your life. And I said, no, that's not the plan. I made a decision right then. I said, no, I'm not doing that, doc. And then after that, I don't know what he said, but I do remember, just telling the nurses not to let anybody in see me for a whole day. And what I did was, I had my own self-pity party for 24 hours. I went through all the different scenarios and felt all the different emotions. And then I decided I'm going to heal myself. I don't know how. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know anything, but there was a feeling inside of me, and I just followed that feeling. And now I know that was spirit talking through me. And at the time I was a 20-year-old, I didn't know anything about that. I wasn't spiritual, but I know today on hindsight that, that was God or spirit or, nature talking to me saying, you can do this. And so I just followed that.
So you would say you were visualizing your new you in a way, going back to gym, doing your thing, being practically the way you were before. That was your goal, that was your dream, that was your visualization. Was that it?
Yes,
Would you call it
exactly.
visualization?
Exactly. Like when you know, being flat on my back in traction 24/7 for 8 weeks, I instantly first day, in gymnastics, I always visualize my routine. So I started visualizing immediately from day one, about being healthy and strong and back, in school and back with my teammates and going to parties and football games and dancing and, going on to my dream job as coaching. And I mean, I did all that. I mean, I got so detail oriented. I even saw the nerve impulses going from my brain to my muscles to make them work again.
As I said, you are a miracle, Gary. There's no other word, because now I know and understand some of the science behind all of this. As I read Dr. Bruce Lipton's The Biology of Belief, and I know of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I attended his week-long retreats. I know the science and now I understand it. But for you to be that young and to be able to do all of it, just because it was in you, that is so unbelievable, and it's miraculous to me. There is no other word, honestly. But maybe I'm thinking, let's break down this phenomenon of visualization a bit. And what I mean is this. So we get up in the morning, right? And we are, powerful and determined, and then we feel great, and we have all those pictures as you did in our head, and feel happy, and as if touching the things, and being around those things that we dream about, that we think about. But then, as the life unfolds and the day unfolds and life happens, something happens that triggers this little something, that change in our brain, and back we are in the sort of the bad reality. It happens, and because we're only human, we're not gods. So what? And did it happen to you, Gary? And if
Oh, yes.
so what did you do to get out of this, to snap out of it?
Well, yeah, I had lots of setbacks, all the time. And for months I would just, like sit up in my bed at night and flop one of my arms into my lap and quiver and shake and try to just make my fingers open, and nothing happened. But, I think that the thing that helps the most is to be able to distinguish between expectations, which are kind of limiting, when you visualize and you expect this to happen and then it doesn't, as versus, like setting your intention, because that opens up all the possibilities. So when I had disappointments all the time and nothing was happening and I felt like I was going to give up, I would just set my intention, like, okay, I intend, that, I'm going to heal completely, and then I can open up my hands. And one of the things that really encouraged me, and I talk about in the book, is that while I was in the hospital, I got my leg back so I could walk again. And in my mind, I thought, okay, if it's going all the way to my toe, it's going to come back to my hands for sure, because it's closer. It's closer to my brain. So that was the kind of thinking that I did. I thought, and I just kept that. I held on to that. And sure enough, it wasn't until 9 months later that I got the feeling back in my arms. I had my legs back, for all that time. And 9 months later, I got the feeling back in my arms.
But immediately, you were in hospital for, did you say 4 weeks, was it? And then you were sent home because you were not responding to any of the treatments. Was that it?
I was actually in the hospital for 8 weeks.
Okay.
After 4 weeks, the doctor came in and gave me the bad news.
Right.
But yeah, I was in the hospital in traction for 8 weeks straight, and then they finally let me go.
without operating on you, without performing any surgery. So they left you and you went home.
Yep.
And then something happened. You felt as if you were in a way sort of cured, and then something happened and you were summoned back to hospital. Wasn't it like that? And something happened later on as well. Give us that story as well, Gary.
Sure. Yeah. Like when I first got out of the hospital, when I went home to the team, I lived in the team house with the team, and now my teammates were my nursemates. They were taking care of me. And so the doctor was having me come in like every 2 weeks for checkups, but he would give me the same diagnosis and prognosis. It was always negative, and then he would cancel appointments because of surgery. So I stopped going to him for like 3 months. I was out healing myself. I was out walking and going to the gym with the guys and doing all kinds of things, being as normal as I could be. And then one day, and I was always in pain. My back muscles would spasm to protect the spinal cord, so I could never get comfortable. And so one day I woke up and I was out of pain. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So I made an appointment, called the doctor, and went back in. And when I went back in, he goes, where have you been? And, he didn't treat me, he was kind of mad with me. But anyway, when I went in, he said, we need to take x-rays. He took x-rays, and the bone hadn't healed. The initial injuries were, I broke it and it subluxed, and it was, looked like a step in a staircase in your spinal column. And he said, you need an operation immediately, or somebody could come up and slap you on the back and say, hello, Gary, and your vertebrae is going to slip off, cut the spinal cord, and you're going to go down, and you're either going to die or you're never going to walk again, or you're never going to move again because you're going to be quadriplegic.
Goodness. So they operated you, and then
yes,
from that point on, you were eventually healed and you returned to gym.
Yes. Yeah. It took me about 1.5 years to get all the way back, and develop all my strength and retrain myself. But yes.
But another question, Gary, keeps popping up all the time. Were you not afraid to go back? I mean,
no, I think that's the mindset, of an athlete. I never questioned that. I wanted to go back. I was excited to get back. That was my goal. I saw myself doing that. And I think it was something that's like, falling off a horse and getting back on. I wanted to prove to myself and to the world that I could do this. Mm-hmm. And everybody has that mindset. Everybody has that power. This mind that we have is the great equalizer. We can all do this.
And I know you have some great stories related to limiting, self-limiting beliefs. And I'd love to hear your story, possibly the one where your friends wanted you to go skiing with them, and maybe another one that is related to writing. How about that?
Yeah. It's funny because, like you said, here's a story of two tales with the same person. Here's a guy that healed himself from a broken neck and paralysis. And when I was 19 years old, my girlfriend and her friends wanted to teach me how to snow ski. And to make a long story short, I went up and I wasn't dressed right. She didn't know how to teach me, the right way, I guess, or whatever. And it was the worst day of my life. I crashed and burned, and my ego was bruised. And I went back to the lodge and just pouted. And so then my mind says, well, how, my ego basically says, well, how are we going to make sense out of this? So I make up a story. Oh, I don't like snow skiing. I don't like to be cold. I'm a water skier. And I held that belief for the rest of my life until I was 42. And another friend said, I'm going to teach you how to snow ski. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm not a snow skier. And he goes, no, I'm going to teach you. And, so then he took me up, and I was dressed right. He showed me how to do it. And by midday, I was skiing the intermediate slopes, and I love snow skiing. And one of the things that came to me, that I'd like to pass on to the listeners is, it hit me when I was on the ski lift going up, and I was in this beautiful Tahoe Valley and looking at the serene view and everything and going, wow, this is so amazing and beautiful. And then I thought, what else am I missing out on?
Oh my
You
God,
know,
yes.
because of the limiting thoughts.
Mm,
All that, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, oh my gosh, I missed out on all of this stuff because I believed I could not snow ski.
mm.
I told myself a story.
Right, we all do, don't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, and then as a coach, I know you developed a special technique in order to prevent the type of accident could happen to any of your students. So you taught them the technique a specific way. What else did you teach your students? I know you are a great coach, and give us a bit about
Yeah,
that.
it's amazing, like, I mean, I developed a basic sequential program that trained awareness, but at the same time, like, and I realized this one time when I was, you know, when I was shopping, one of my former students' parents talked to me in the grocery store and said, about how her daughter was doing so great at school, and she was the president of her sorority and all these different things. She got and she goes, it's all because of what you taught her in gymnastics. And I said, really? What are you talking about? And she goes, well, because of you, and then she gave me a dissertation, and she said, because of your, what you taught her in gymnastics, she know how to manage time, she set goals, she knows how to
Mm.
conflict resolution. I mean, it was like, she developed a good team. It's like, oh my gosh. And I thought, you're right. It's not about, you know, the sport and winning, losing,
Not
and the
just
medals. It's about,
gymnastics. Yeah,
no,
yeah,
not just gymnastics. It's all the things that everybody learned behind the scenes that help them in life.
right. And now your incredible book, which is Broken to Brilliance: Overcome Obstacles to Create Opportunities and Achieve the Impossible. Before we tackle the book, writing was another thing that you sort of tried to avoid. Am I right in
Yeah.
saying so? Why
Yes.
was
Yes.
that?
Oh, thank you for that one, Milangela. Yes. My mother, she was, um, from Iowa, like I said, and she got a great education. And so she always told me from day one when I was younger, because what happened in when I went to school is they skipped basics again. They didn't teach me phonics.
Mm,
So I didn't know how to pronounce words, and I didn't know how to spell. And so when I started writing things and my mom was looking at my homework, she would always say, oh my gosh, she wouldn't say it to me. She would say, man, these teachers are not teaching you the right things. They're not teaching you how to write. You don't know how to write. Now you're a terrible writer.
oh
And
my
so
God, yeah.
it was a story I told myself from
Mm,
elementary school on, that, yeah, I'm a terrible writer. And
mm.
so I came to having to write this book. It took me so long to get through it, because that's the story I told myself. I'm a terrible writer. Why am I can't write a book.
So
That's impossible.
where did you decide to actually write your own book, your biography? When was that?
I actually started writing stories down way back in 2000.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I started writing them down, and I had them on the computer. I had no idea what I was going to do with them. And then over the years, lots of our friends were saying, Gary, you need to write a book. You need to write the book. You need to write the book. And I kept resisting it because of my
Mm.
story. I'm a writer. No, I'm not doing that. I don't, So anyway, yeah, it's been a long time coming, and then just in the last 2 years, what I did was I hired a writing coach to help me out and give me, steps in training, obviously, again, and back to basics. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, I had all the time in the world on my hands. So I hunkered down and I finished the book, and I'm so glad.
So are we. So tell us a little something about the book. Don't give everything out, because I want to invite our listeners to, buy a copy, or, maybe give a copy away to a good friend, but about the book still.
Sure. Well, yeah, it's a memoir of my life, it's centered around the healing of my injury and stuff, but it's all the way from childhood through adolescence and high school, college, my career and into adulthood. Uh, and the thing that I enjoyed the most while I was writing is that all of the aha moments I had about connecting the dots of my life. And that's what I want, your listeners and everybody to know, that, you can, if you can get a new perspective on why things happen to you in your life. And what I learned from writing the book was life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And if you can gain that perspective, then you look at life completely different.
Right. So all the opportunities come your way. So life happens, and everything along life, whatever life brings along, it happens for you. That's such a clever sentence, such a great philosophy. Gary, your final remark to our listeners, piece of advice, I don't know.
Oh, I would say that I would encourage them, I would invite them to connect the dots of their life. Go back and look at all of the things that have occurred, and what are the stories that they're telling themselves that are holding them back. And if they can get an awareness of that, that will change their life.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never give up. Never give up.
Yeah. One of the examples that I have, for myself was my dad. He was amazing, and he taught me so many different things. But the way he taught me, because he didn't, he was on a time crunch, I guess. I wasn't thinking when I was a kid. He had to get things done, and so he would include me in all the projects around the house. He taught me how to build things and do all kinds of stuff. But the way he taught me was, because he had to get it done, was that he didn't have the patience to let me stumble through it. And so when, we were working on something, he would send me off to go get a tool, and then he'd finish the job for me.
I know
while
that.
I was gone.
I know that type.
Yeah. And then so that screamed loud and clear to me. It's like, oh, you're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not talented enough to do this. And so I blamed my dad for making me feel like I was not good enough. And then, the new perspective, here it was, I was in my kitchen, just a couple of years ago, and it hit me like, oh my gosh, if my dad hadn't have taught me the way he did, I wouldn't be teaching the way I did, and I wouldn't have had the success that I had. I mean, thank you, Dad, for having me find a new way to teach that allowed me to reach my full potential.
So again, life happens for us, right? Okay, now, this is probably the end of this talk, but let me remind you again, dear listeners, I will post definitely the link to Gary's platforms down below. So maybe could you please tell us your accounts, FB accounts, and you're on LinkedIn, and can you give us that as well?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn, and you can go to my website, GaryBuckmann.com, and it's Buckmann. And if you want to get the book, we now have a direct link. You can go to Broken to Brilliant.
Which is the title of the book, yeah, and you get to the book,
yeah, and it'll take you right to the page.
Right, and the book is available as a Kindle or a paperback edition, whichever you go for, and it's just there sitting and waiting for you. Thank you ever so much, Gary, for coming on, and all the wisdom you shared and everything you do, your contribution to this world. Thank you ever so much. I appreciate your time and you've been with me, and I'm really honored that only a week after or so after your book was published, you are a guest on my platform. So thank you ever so much for that.
Well, thank you, Milangela, for having me, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you, dear listeners, for staying tuned, and till next time. Bye.